Welcome back to the Horror Academic, and I'm going to start off with a little, I guess we call this housekeeping in the podcast YouTuber world. For the next couple weeks, I'm going to go back to my research on Black women in horror. Those of you who have been watching this series know that a couple weeks back, last month, I guess, I highlighted what I was using in my research on projects in Black women in horror, and was looking at films that were referenced in Horror Noire, the book and the documentary. So what I've decided that given the state of the world, and that there's a lot more movies that I did not get to watch in that part of my research, I'm going to take the time now and I'm going to kind of fill out the list of other movies I didn't have time to watch in time for my paper. So, and then a quick note, I kind of annoyed with myself that I hadn't watched more of these films already. When we get to like the blaxploitation was never quite my genre. So that was something I had to go back and re-explore. And then as far as kind of like 90s black horror, I don't know why I felt that I was not welcome to the show. You know what I mean? Like, I definitely took in other black forms of media in the 90s. I not to justify anything. I'm just saying, as somebody who worked at a video store and had access to stuff, I should have been watching this stuff already, but I felt it wasn't, it wasn't for me. I guess it wasn't targeted at me, which is, my fault for not going beyond the targeting advertising. So, as a bit of catch up, I'm going to focus for the next couple weeks on more black horror movies that I missed as a way to highlight other black media that you should be checking out if, like me, you missed them. Or if you had seen them and, maybe it's time to go back and check them out again and see, what, it's been a while, it's worth watching more. So, going through Horror Noire, particularly when you get to like the 90s, there's a whole chunk of movies. I started with Bones when I was doing my paper, and I enjoyed that a lot. So tonight, or last night I should say, I watched Tales from the Hood. So I ended up renting it on Amazon Prime, which it's like $4 a rental. So not a bad way to check out a movie these days without having cable. And it was good. It was fun. It was smart. It was at times poignant. So Tales from the Hood is an anthology story, very much like Tales from the Crypt, hence the namesake. But filmatically, it has times where it's more Creepshow in nature, which both are very fun. Creepshow is a lot more colorful and punny. But I feel like the end cap pieces, the kind of the wraparound story in between the stories. There's these three dudes who are going to a funeral parlor, and the wacky zany guy who runs the funeral parlor feels the need to tell them a story for every casket, and that's how we get the Tales from the Hood. So the wraparound story felt a lot more Creepshow-ish to me. The style, the look was very Tales from the Crypt 90s TV series, HBO, I believe it was. I don't know, we didn't have that channel at the time. HBO or Showtime. One of those. Anyway, there's 4 stories. One that kind of looks at domestic abuse with children. One that looks like, a story about police brutality. One that's about gun violence. And the 4th is about racism. So we got Clarence Williams III from Mod Squad. He's like our Crypt Keeper guy. He's the funeral parlor director. Then you have David Alan Grier, who you think of as like a funny man, but in this he's such the opposite. He's like this abusive guy. This really different character for him, which I thought was really cool. Corbin Burnson. He's this really awful, racist kind of politician that even invokes the name Duke, so it's even got that little reference to David Duke. Really smart. But then what's cool to me was that kind of going even a little deeper, was finding some of the people that were really like all over 90s cinema. So the first story that deals with police brutality um, and a cop who's a rookie cop who's witness to something awful happening and regrets it for the rest of his life, quits the force kind of thing. The two of the cops that are involved in that scenario that he's part of is Michael Massey, who you'll know better as Fun Boy in The Crow, very cool, and Dwayne Whitaker, who he played not Zed, but the guy who owned the pawn shop in Pulp Fiction. So that was crazy too. I was like, oh my god, like it seemed like every story there was at least one person that I could identify from another movie or like they had a recognizable face. So that was cool. I did also notice in the credits that this film was produced by Spike Lee, which was pretty cool that he used his platform to go outside of his realm and grab people that worked in the genre, which I thought was really cool. But another thing that I thought was very cool was that the score was by Christopher Young. Now, Christopher Young has done the Hellraiser films and a lot of great horror movies. So that was pretty stellar too. And yeah, the music was great. Overall, I thought the stories were really good. The acting was really good. Like I said, it got very poignant at times, dealing with some really heavy issues. But then at the same time, we were laughing out loud. There were some parts that were definitely funny. Like I said, good effects. Really strong anthology. Anthologies are hard to pull off because unfortunately it tends to be like there's one or two really strong stories and then it kind of fades down with lesser stories towards either the beginning or the end, or the middle is kind of usually padded, right, with like some okay stories. But I thought this was pretty strong. If anything, it was strange how the final story, which deals with kind of gun violence in society, has this very Clockwork Orange-like sequence where this guy who has been killing people, kind of casually, is incarcerated and he's put through this program where he's forced to watch these images of actual violence and pain. And it's kind of interspersed from like images from movies to like real images of lynching, which was a bit kind of like shocking, which I know totally the intent, right? But that was really crazy. Another really cool thing about that fourth story, the woman who's the doctor that's overseeing this program that the guy is kind of forced to go through to deal with his own violence, is played by Rosalind Cash. Now, Rosalind Cash was the woman in The Omega Man. So that's really cool. She was also in, I believe, The Stand. So she has a really cool career. So it was cool to see her here. Like I said, lots of great acting, fun stories, good stories, smart stories, dealing with things from different perspectives. So it's not 100% what we're dealing with right now, but it does show that we've been dealing with a lot of these things for quite a long time. So it is a little more timely than I guess if maybe I watched this 5 or 10 years ago. I might not have been thinking so strongly about some of these issues like police brutality, gun violence, and things like that, because it's so right here, right now. But where a lot of us are like, I'm seeing people that are talking about avoiding triggering media right now, right? Like, so dealing with a pandemic, a lot of people who are avoiding things that are pandemic in nature, but then there's other people who are kind of diving in and really like taking in, like there's a lot of people rewatching The Stand right now. There's a lot of people, still watching like Walking Dead and things like that, where other people are choosing to shy away from those types of stories, where same things can be said to be true about violence in imagery, and how a lot of people maybe are kind of avoiding images that might be too shocking right now to deal with in entertainment. So I didn't have that problem watching this. It's just different enough that it struck a chord, but it didn't make it uncomfortable. But I don't know if I would caution you from not watching this at this time because of that. I mean, if you're really sensitive right now to violence, you're probably not watching a lot of horror movies as it is. So, all that to be said, I really enjoyed Tales from the Hood. I've kind of already been warned that the sequel that was made recently does not live up to how good this one is. But I understand now why there's a lot of reverence for this film. A lot of people I've talked to who are younger than me, actually, that are kind of people I've talked to casually at work, because we'll talk horror movies a lot because everybody knows I like horror movies. This one comes up a lot, and I'm like, no, I never did see that. And I kind of had to attribute it to like a generation gap kind of thing. But I don't know. I shouldn't let that stop me from watching things now, right? So I enjoyed it. I recommend it. Like I said, I got it on Amazon Prime for a rental of about $4 just because, state of the world, I can't order something and get it tomorrow or, go to the store. But, however you want to seek it out, check it out. I couldn't find it for free, just to let you know. So that's why I did the rental fee. Unfortunately, that's probably why all the movies I'm going to review for the next 2 weeks are going to be rentals, one way or another, because in the timeliness of doing my research before in time for my paper, I avoided things I had to pay for. So if that's a deterrent, I get it. Hold off, eventually things kind of make the cycle through. Check for things on like Tubi. That's a good place. Pluto movies had some good stuff too. Just know you're watching the commercials if you go through those. So, like I said, Tales from the Hood. I recommend it, and then come back in another couple days. I will have another review of another black horror film from the 90s. All right? See you next time, guys. Bye.